Officer Derek Reynolds' cruiser slowed as he spotted Devin Carter walking through Westview Heights. Another black teenager in a wealthy white suburb, automatically suspicious in Reynolds' eyes. Neither knew that Reynolds' mocking laughter when Devin mentioned his father's career as a pilot would trigger a chain of events that would leave the entire town speechless. The afternoon sun beat down mercilessly on the manicured lawns of Westview Heights, a suburb where property values and expectations ran equally high. Devin Carter walked with purpose, his expensive headphones creating a barrier between himself and the world around him. The music of Kendrick Lamar flowed through his ears, the lyrics about resilience and identity providing a fitting soundtrack to his life as one of the few black students at Lakeside Preparatory Academy. At 16, Devin had mastered the delicate art of moving through his neighborhood, visible but unremarkable. Not too fast to appear suspicious, not too slow to seem like he was loitering. Head up, eyes forward, face neutral. His father's advice played in his mind like a mantra. Keep your chin up, but your guard higher. As he passed Mrs. Harrington's colonial-style house, the lace curtains twitched. They always did. The 70-year-old widow tracked his movements every Tuesday and Thursday when debate team practice kept him at school late. Devin pretended not to notice, remembering his father's words from years ago. Some people will only ever see your skin color, not your character. Their limitation, not yours. The corner store came next. Inside, Mr. Patel's eyes followed Devin through the window, his gaze suspicious and unwavering. Devin had been buying snacks there for the 3 years his family had lived in Westview Heights, yet the owner still watched him as though inventory might mysteriously disappear into his pockets. Devin turned up his music. It was easier that way. He was 2 blocks from home when the white police cruiser pulled alongside him, matching his pace in that distinctive way that made his stomach tighten. He'd seen it before, not personally, but in countless videos, in stories from his cousins in the city, in his father's careful instructions about how to handle these encounters. The window rolled down smoothly. "Hey, you there?" called the officer. Devin stopped, removing his headphones. "Yes, sir?" His voice emerged steady despite the sudden dryness in his throat. Officer Derek Reynolds was 6 weeks into his job at Westview Heights PD. At 33, he carried himself with the aggressive confidence of someone with something to prove. His military-style haircut and rigid posture hinted at a military background, though few knew he'd washed out of Air Force training after repeatedly failing the flight aptitude tests, a detail carefully omitted from all conversations and job. "Applications. What are you doing in this neighborhood?" Reynolds asked, eyes narrowing as he scanned Devin from head to toe, taking in his Lakeside prep uniform, expensive sneakers, and the high-end headphones now hanging around his neck. "I live here, sir. Just walking home from school." Devin maintained eye contact, respectful but not challenging, precisely as his father had taught him. "ID? I only have my school ID, sir." Devin reached slowly toward his backpack. "Keep your hands where I can see them," Reynolds snapped, his right hand shifting toward his holster with practiced efficiency. Devin froze immediately, his hands visible in front of him. "My ID is in my backpack, sir." Reynolds exited his vehicle and circled around, his movements deliberate, almost theatrical. Several neighbors slowed their cars, watching the scene unfold. Mrs. Whitaker, returning from her tennis lesson, didn't even pretend not to stare. Across the street, Mia Rodriguez, Devin's classmate from AP Physics, quietly began recording with her phone, partially hidden behind a sprawling oak tree. "Empty the bag," Reynolds demanded, positioning himself at what he considered a tactical distance. Devon carefully set his backpack down and unzipped it. As he removed his advanced physics textbook, debate team materials, and a meticulously crafted model airplane he'd been working on for his aerodynamics project, Reynolds's demeanor shifted from caution to contempt. The backpack contained nothing suspicious, but rather than ending the encounter, Reynolds pressed harder. "Where exactly do you live?" "Lakeview Circle, sir, number 225, just around the corner." "Parents' home?" "My mom is. My dad's away for work." "And what does your father do?" Reynolds's tone turned mockingly casual, tinged with something that made Devon's skin crawl. "He's a commercial airline pilot for Atlantic Airways. He flies international routes." The words came out matter-of-factly, without defensiveness, just the truth. Reynolds's face split into a wide grin before he burst into laughter, the sound echoing down the quiet street. "A pilot? Your dad flies airplanes?" The derision in his voice carried to the gathering onlookers. Devon said nothing. His expression, carefully neutral, though humiliation burned inside him like a hot coal. "Officer Simmons!" Reynolds called to his partner, who was approaching from their parked cruiser. "This kid says his daddy's a commercial pilot. Maybe he flies fighter jets, too." Officer Simmons, newer to the force and already uncomfortable with Reynolds's approach, glanced anxiously at the gathering observers. "Maybe we should—" "Listen, kid," Reynolds interrupted, stepping closer to Devon. "Next time you make up stories, pick something believable. I was in the Air Force. I know what pilots look like." The implication hung heavy between them, unspoken but crystal clear to everyone watching. "Pack up and move along," Reynolds finally said, apparently bored with Devon's lack of reaction. "Stay out of trouble." Devon carefully repacked his bag, conscious of the eyes watching his every movement. He placed his headphones back over his ears, though he didn't turn the music on. As he walked away, Reynolds's voice carried clearly in the afternoon stillness. "Commercial pilot, right. Bet Dad works as a janitor at the airport if he's around at all." Devon maintained his composure, his steps measured and even, refusing to give Reynolds the satisfaction of seeing his pain. As he disappeared around the corner, Mia slipped her phone into her pocket, the video secured, her face tight with anger at what she'd witnessed. Reynolds watched a moment longer before returning to his cruiser. "Find out who this Carter kid's father really is," he told Simmons as they pulled away. Something about the teenager's calm confidence bothered Reynolds deeply, like an itch he couldn't scratch. The front door of 225 Lakeview Circle closed behind Devon as he entered his family's home. Unlike the ostentatious mansions that dominated Westview Heights, the Carter residence was tasteful and lived in, with photographs and souvenirs from around the world, testaments to Captain Michael Carter's international career. The living room. Walls displayed carefully chosen family photos, Devon's academic awards, his younger sister Zoe's piano recitals, family vacations in Tokyo, London, and Cape Town. And prominently displayed in the center was Michael Carter in his pilot's uniform, standing proudly beside the Boeing 737 he regularly commanded across the oceans. Devon dropped his backpack by the stairs and grabbed an apple from the kitchen fruit bowl. The encounter with Officer Reynolds replayed in his mind like a bad movie as he took a bite, the crisp sound filling the quiet house. A memory surfaced. Himself at 9 years old, sitting wide-eyed in a flight simulator while his father patiently explained the complex array of instruments and controls. "Why do people look surprised when they meet you, Dad?" he had asked, after noticing the reactions of passengers. Michael's smile had been warm but serious. "Because they have a limited view of who belongs in a cockpit. Never let someone else's limited vision become your reality." At the time, Devon hadn't fully understood. Now, at 16, the meaning was painfully clear. His mother, Dr. Aisha Carter, entered from her home office, still wearing her hospital administrator badge from Westview Medical Center, where she oversaw a staff of 200. "Hey, honey, how was school?" she asked, her keen eyes already assessing his mood. "Fine," Devin replied automatically. Aisha studied his face, noting the tension around his mouth, the slight furrow between his brows. What happened? It wasn't a question, but a statement. Devin hesitated, considering whether to shield her from this. "Got stopped by a cop walking home." Aisha stiffened, her casual demeanor instantly replaced with alert concern. "What happened? What did he want?" "The usual. Asked what I was doing here. Checked my backpack." "His name?" "Reynolds. He's new." She nodded, filing away the information with a precision that made her an excellent administrator. "What else? I know there's more." Devin sighed, placing the half-eaten apple on the counter. "He asked about Dad. When I said he's a pilot, he laughed in my face, made sure everyone heard." Aisha's expression hardened, her jaw setting in a way Devin recognized from previous battles, with school boards, homeowners associations, and hospital executives who had underestimated her. "Your father needs to know about this." That evening, after Devin and 12-year-old Zoe had gone to bed, Aisha's conversation with Michael was brief but decisive. His response, coming through the secure line from his London hotel room, was immediate. "I'm landing at Westview Regional tomorrow at 3:30, flight 1726 from London. I was scheduled for Dallas, but I've arranged a swap with Captain Richardson. This needs addressing." "Michael, you don't need to change your flight assignment," Aisha began. "Yes, I do," he replied, his voice carrying the quiet authority that had earned him respect in cockpits and boardrooms alike. "We moved to Westview Heights, so our children could have opportunities, not humiliation. No one gets to make our son feel less than who he is, especially not someone with a badge." The next morning at school, Mia Rodriguez approached Devin before first period, her dark eyes serious behind her glasses. "I saw what happened yesterday with that officer." Devin tensed. "And?" "It was wrong." "I recorded it," she said, showing him her phone briefly. "That cop had no right to treat you that way." "Why would you record it?" Devin asked, genuinely curious. "Because it wasn't right," Mia said simply, pushing her glasses up. "My dad's a civil rights attorney. He says always document injustice. You never know when you'll need evidence." Devin nodded slowly, processing this unexpected alliance. "What are you going to do with it?" "Nothing unless you want me to." She paused, studying his face. "But was it true? About your dad?" The question hung between them like a test. Devin considered, brushing it off, changing the subject. Instead, he nodded once. "Yes." Word spread quickly through Lakeside Prep's hallways. By lunch period, Jason Brooks and his lacrosse teammates approached Devin's table in the cafeteria. "Hey, Carter," Jason called loudly enough for nearby tables to hear. "Heard you told that cop your dad's like Tom Cruise in Top Gun." Devin continued eating his lunch silently, not giving Jason the satisfaction of eye contact. "My dad says if your dad's a pilot, he's probably flying toy planes," Jason sneered, encouraged by his friend's snickering. "Your dad discusses my family. At dinner?" "Weird," Devin replied coolly, finally looking up. Jason's face reddened. "Whatever. Everyone knows you're lying. Black airline pilot? Right." Devin held Jason's gaze, his expression neutral but unflinching. Something in his quiet confidence made Jason shift uncomfortably before muttering, "Come on, guys," and retreating to their regular table. Mia slid into the seat across from Devon a moment later, placing her tray down with a thud. "Ignore Jason. His dad's that banker who got caught discriminating against minority loan applicants last year. Had to settle out of court." Devon's mouth twitched in what might have been a smile. "You know a lot about people's parents." "Attorney's kid," she shrugged, opening her milk carton. "I hear things at dinner that aren't supposed to leave the table. Dad gets worked up." Meanwhile, Officer Reynolds began his shift, determined to expose what he believed was Devon's lie. His evening search for information about the Carter family had yielded little. Dr. Aisha Carter maintained a professional profile as a hospital administrator. Michael Carter's online presence was minimal, showing only a few family photos and travel snapshots. Devon had no social media presence at all, unusual for a teenager. Reynolds drove to Lakeview Circle and parked down the block from the Carter residence. He approached a silver-haired man working in his meticulously maintained yard. "Good morning, sir. Officer Reynolds, Westview Heights PD. Just getting to know the neighborhood." "How long have you lived here?" 22 years, the man replied, straightening up with pride. "Walter Jenkins. Saw this place built up from farmland. So you must know most of your neighbors." "The Carters at 225. What's their story?" Jenkins wiped his hands on his gardening apron. "Known them 5 years now. Aisha's brilliant. Runs the hospital's East Wing. Kids are both honor students. Devon's in that robotics program that won nationals. And Michael, the father, what's his story?" Reynolds interrupted, trying to sound casual. "Captain with Atlantic Airways. Flies international routes. London, Tokyo, Sydney. Good man. Organized the community aviation program for underprivileged kids last year. Took 20 kids from the east side up in small planes." Jenkins smiled at the memory. "Never seen children so excited." Reynolds frowned slightly. "He's actually a pilot? You're sure about that?" Jenkins looked puzzled. "Of course. Why wouldn't he be? His parking spot at the airport has his name on it. Captain M. Carter." He studied Reynolds' face. "Something wrong, officer?" "No, just doing community outreach. Thank you for your time." As Reynolds continued his inquiries throughout the morning, everyone confirmed the same story. Michael Carter was exactly who Devon had claimed, a respected senior pilot with nearly 20 years of experience and a reputation for mentoring minority youth interested in aviation careers. That afternoon, Reynolds sat at his desk in the station, searching database records with growing frustration. When he attempted to access Michael's employment records, he hit a security restriction. Airline personnel records, restricted access, TSA security protocols in effect. After his shift ended, Reynolds found himself driving to Westview Regional Airport, pulled by a compulsion he couldn't quite name. At the administration building, he flashed his badge at the receptionist. "Officer Reynolds, Westview Heights PD. Need to verify some information about one of your pilots, Michael Carter." The receptionist, a middle-aged woman with efficient movements, typed something into her computer, then looked up with a professional smile. "Captain Carter is one of our senior international pilots. In fact, he's commanding Flight 1726 from London, arriving at 3:30 today. Gate 8. Is there a problem, officer?" Reynolds checked his watch. 2:45 p.m. Perfect timing. "No problem. Thank you." That's all I needed. Something compelled Reynolds to wait. He positioned himself near Gate 8, watching as passengers began gathering to meet arriving travelers. A woman with a "Welcome Home, Daddy" sign stood with a little girl in pigtails. "Business," Travelers clustered near the charging stations. At 3:30 precisely, the arrival board updated. Flight 1726 from London arrived. At 3:50, passengers began streaming through the gate. Reynolds watched intently, his eyes scanning each person. And then he appeared, a tall, distinguished black man in a captain's uniform, 4 gold stripes on his sleeves, pilot's hat tucked under his arm. Captain Michael Carter moved with quiet authority, the natural command of someone who routinely controlled aircraft worth hundreds of millions of dollars and was responsible for hundreds of lives. Reynolds stared, the reality of his mistake crashing down on him like a physical weight. He had been so certain Devon was lying, so convinced his own assumptions were correct, that he hadn't considered the simplest explanation. Devon had been telling the truth all along. As Captain Carter greeted waiting passengers, answering a question about weather patterns over the Atlantic, his eyes swept the terminal and landed directly on Reynolds. The officer realized instantly that Carter recognized him, though they had never met. Aisha must have described him, or perhaps Devon had. Instead of ignoring him, Carter finished speaking with the passenger and walked directly toward Reynolds, his expression calm but determined. "Officer Reynolds," he said, extending his hand, "I believe you've met my son." Reynolds stared at the outstretched hand before slowly taking it. "Captain Carter," he managed, his voice uncharacteristically subdued. "There seems to have been a misunderstanding. When you questioned my son's word, you questioned my existence," Carter replied, his deep voice carrying quiet authority that made Reynolds straighten involuntarily. "When you laughed at his truth, you denied our reality. That's not a misunderstanding, Officer Reynolds. That's prejudice." Reynolds stood speechless, searching for words that wouldn't come. "I don't want your apology," Carter continued. "I want your reflection. Ask yourself why it was so impossible to believe my son could be the child of a pilot. The answer might enlighten you." Before Reynolds could respond, a commotion erupted behind them. A yellow school bus had pulled up outside the terminal, and 20 students from Devon's school were filing in, led by Devon himself and Ms. Patterson, the science teacher. "What's going on?" Reynolds asked, confusion evident in his voice. "Career. Day field trip," Carter replied with a slight smile. "I arranged it last month. My son's class is touring the flight deck today. I'll be showing them the cockpit of the 777 I just piloted across the Atlantic." He paused, watching recognition dawn on Reynolds's face. "You're welcome to join us, officer. It might be educational." As the students spotted Captain Carter in his uniform, excited whispers spread through the group. Devon stood taller, his eyes meeting Reynolds with quiet dignity. Not triumph, not gloating, just the silent acknowledgement of truth. Jason Brooks, who had mocked Devon at lunch, stood open-mouthed at the back of the group, his lacrosse jacket suddenly seeming very small. "No, Reynolds struggled for words. "I have to get back to my shift." Carter nodded. "Of course. But Officer Reynolds, next time a young person tells you something about their family that doesn't fit your preconceptions, consider that your preconceptions might be the problem, not their truth." As Reynolds walked away, he heard a student ask, "Is that really your dad, Devon?" "Yes," came Devon's proud reply. "That's my father, Captain Carter." 2 weeks later, Reynolds requested a transfer to community outreach and enrolled in implicit bias training offered by the department. 6 months later, when Michael Carter spoke at the Westview Heights Community Center about aviation careers for minority youth, Reynolds attended, bringing several teenagers from the community center, where he now volunteered on weekends. The first question came from a 12-year-old black girl. Can someone like me really be a pilot? Captain Carter smiled. Absolutely. The sky doesn't care about your skin color, only your skill and determination. From the back of the room, Reynolds nodded in agreement, the lesson finally learned. And Devon? He started flight lessons that summer, not because he had something to prove to others, but because the sky had always been his destination. What assumptions cloud your vision? What truths do you dismiss because they don't fit your expectations? Sometimes the reality we refuse to see lands right in front of us.